Shalom, welcome. This is Eliyahu Shir from Chesed Ve'emet, www.lovingkindness.co. We're here for another shiur in the beautiful work called Derech Hashem, the Way of God, written by the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, 18th century. And we're actually learning part 3, which deals with, as you can see on the page in front of you in Sefaria, it deals with the divine names and witchcraft, an amazing subject. Who would have thought that the Torah goes into such depth as mysticism behind using God's names and witchcraft, things like that. Yet the Ramchal is taking us through this concept of the story, basically. Everything has got a story to it. And he's taking us through the story of how God creates the world and how he interacts with the world. And in our previous shiur, we spoke about how God creates a system whereby he gives to the world in a certain direction. And then after that, he allows us to interact with the system that he's created, in fact, to make changes in the world. And this is where we are at over here. I'm just reading from here. I'm going back a sentence from where we were before. Even though all this took place with these angels and creation and the flow of light, blessing from above to below, God wanted to be called by a name, in order that all of creations would be able to awaken themselves to him, and to call to him, meaning we can have a connection with God. This is amazing. It's not just that God created a world to run by itself in a natural way. For example, whether I'm in the world or not, I know for certain that the world will continue. I know, not because I know, God can stop the world at any point in time that he wants to. But in the general aspect of thinking, we know that the sun will rise, the sun will set. Whether a person is living today and he dies later on, or whether he lives the next day, the sun will still rise and the sun will still set. God could have created a system whereby there's a flow of light constantly, and all of creation is sustained through this natural process. But God didn't want it that way. He wanted something else. He wanted us to interact with him. He wanted us to call out using his name, in order to make mention of him, to say his name, and through that, to become closer to him. If anybody's reading this, by the way, in the translation on the left-hand side, I just want to point out that the translation is not exactly corresponding in the lines. So, for example, where I'm reading here, you'll see that the translation is actually only much lower down. Yet he made his name blessed, wanted to be called by a name in order that his creatures could be aroused towards him and called him. So if you're trying to follow along, please note that the text is not exactly parallel. V'hinei, and behold, sorry? So he made for his honor this special name, and he said about it, this is my name both for the world and forever. And this is the name which he is called by through his honor itself, according to what he wanted to be called, b'shem, by his name. In other words, we call God by a name. Everybody knows. We daven in the Siddur, Baruch atah Hashem. Hashem we say in a certain way. This is God's name. And of course, we know that there are other names as well. And as we said in the previous shiur, we spoke very briefly that there is this rabbi who lived in the 13th century, Rabbi Yosef Gikatalia, who was a student of, here it says Gikatila, or Gikatalia, it's said in different ways, in different texts. Anyhow, we see over here, he was a pupil of Rabbi Abraham Abulafia, the great prophetic teacher and teacher of prophetic Kabbalah, who lived in the 13th century, whose books are available today. People can go into an ordinary Jewish bookstore and purchase these books and learn how to use these techniques themselves in order to reach these high levels that he speaks about. And his student, Rabbi Yosef Gikatalia, he wrote a book, a very famous book known as the Share Ora, the Gates of Light. And as I said before, one can purchase this. It's available on your local internet store somewhere, or alternatively in a Jewish bookstore. And in this book, he lists approximately 300 names, which are all connected in some way to the different Sefirot. And what that really means is, as one pronounces a name, one connects with one of the Sefirot, and one causes a reaction of a flow of light from that particular Sephirah.
Pronounces a name or reads or meditates on a name.
Let us be clear. There are two parts to it. One part is pronouncing Hashem's name. For example, Kale. If I say the name Kale, as in Aleph Lamed, which I'm pronouncing as Kale because I don't want to say the whole name as it should be said, Aleph Lamed, or Elokim, Aleph Lamed, and then Hey Yud Mem, Elokim. If I say that name in the prayer, I actually cause something to happen through the power behind the name Elokim, which is related to Gevurah. The name Elokim, for example, is related to Gevurah. The name Kale, for example, is related to Chesed. The name Ekieh, for example, means when Moshe is when he's about to tell the Jewish people that he's going to lead them out of Egypt, so he says to God, "Well, what should I tell them? Who's making all this happen?" And God says, "Ekieh Asher Ekieh." Tell them, "Ekieh Asher Ekieh." I will be who I will be. That's my name. Tell them that's the name that's going to take them out of their bondage in Egypt. And each of these names, each of the names of God correspond to one of the Sefirot. Certain names, of course, the general names, may be pronounced exactly as they are. But then there are other names. There are different aspects of what a name is. For example, there is a name that is made up of the acronym of a verse. For example, if you take a verse and you take the first letters off the verse, you can turn that into a name of Hashem. It's not really the name of Hashem, but there is a power within those letters to do something. Here again, there is no problem in general in reciting that, because all of that is really just the letters of various words that are making up other words. There's no problem. Then there may be certain words that are problematic, or for example, the names of angels, which one has to be careful about pronouncing unless one is pronouncing it in context. And then there are other certain rules that apply to names. But in general, we're speaking on our simple level of pronouncing the names of God in the sense. There are other things that one can do. You are quite right. One can also contemplate on the name of God, which also causes a reaction, especially, for example, if we mix God's names. For example, we call it knitting. We knit one of God's names. There we do not pronounce the name of God at all, but rather we knit it and we think of the name of God as we pronounce a particular blessing. For example, we can take the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and we can take the name of Adnus, which is Aleph, Dalet, and then Nun, and then Yud, and we can knit the two names together, which becomes the Yud of the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei with the Aleph of the Aleph, Dalet, and then Nun and Yud, and then we can knit it and continue on with the Hey, and then the Dalet of the Adnus name, and then afterwards we've done the Yud and we've done the Hey, we go on to the Vav, and then the Nun, and then we knit the name together, or in the other order with the Aleph first and then the Yud. Here we do not pronounce the name at all. That is not how we bring the blessing into the world. We bring the blessing into the world by reciting something and contemplating on this name in our mind, by just seeing it as a picture. And by seeing the name as a picture, we are able to draw down the blessing. We don't have to do this in terms of general worship of God. This is already a step higher. This is the level whereby we are working on ourselves, that we are feeling the connection to Hashem is moving up. We're feeling closer to Hashem. We want to do more in terms of our prayer. It's not sufficient that we don't talk during davening. It's not sufficient that we just say the words. It's not sufficient that we should just think in our minds good, positive thoughts. We want to go even higher. We want to move higher and higher on the realms of prayer. Then one can do this. For example, when one recites the word Amen. So Amen has the numerical value. Amen has the gematria. Aleph, Mem, Nun. The Mem and the Nun is 40 and 50 is 90, plus the Aleph is 1. It's 91. When you take the two names of the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and the Adonus also, you get to also 91. And therefore, every time a person recites Amen to a bracha, if he contemplates on the two names that have been knitted together, one is able to draw down the bracha in an even higher manner. He gets to the root of what the Amen means. The Amen hints to the two names of God, which are actually embedded in each other. Okay, that's a level to itself. Let us see what the Ramchal says exactly with regards to using these different names, because he's going to explain it in enough detail for us to know about and how to use it. So he says over here, we did this particular thing. Indeed, however, according to all the particulars of this flow, God wanted to be called through different names. He wanted to be called by different names. He wanted a particular name to pertain to a particular attribute of his, and that will cause a flow in a certain direction. V'hine, behold, gazar v'chakak, he decreed and he engraved, shebahaskir bruav et shmo, that when a person mentions God's name, when the creatures of the world, meaning human beings, mention the name of God, yimashech lahem mimenu he'ara v'hashpa'a, they'll be able to draw down from it, from God, an illumination and a flow of something, a flow of sustenance, a flow of blessing. Okay, inyan shene'emar, and as it says, b'chol ha'makom asher azkir et shmi, in every place that I mention my name, avo elav uberachticha, I will come to you and I will bless you. Meaning, whenever a person mentions one of God's names, meaning in the context that he's supposed to mention it, he will draw down a blessing because he has awoken some sort of spiritual force related to the name, related to the power of the Sephirah, related to the light that has to shine through like a torch and bring this blessing down into the world. However, Kafi Hashem Shiazkiruhu, according to the name that he's going to mention over there, will be mentioned by Vikruhu, and they're going to call to him, Bo kach tiye hashpa'a hanimsheches al yedei haskara hi. So he's going to draw down this flow that comes down through this particular mentioning. Pirush, which means ki hashpa'a shetimashech, that this flow that he draws down, tiye mimin ota hashpa'a, it will come from that very flow. She'al soda nitchiaches lo yisparach Hashemahu, according to the secret that is related to this particular name. Rabbi Moshe Chaim, known as the Ramaz, wrote a work freely available in Jewish bookstores. I'm not mentioning the name at this point in time, but one can walk into a Jewish bookstore, one can ask for this book, but written by the Ramaz, Rabbi Moshe Chaim, in which all these various names of God are mentioned. And there's a lengthy introduction to it, because by making use of all of these names, one can cause certain things to happen. Now, this isn't just a joke. This is serious spiritual mechanics, spiritual technology. This is what's happening, that there are spiritual worlds out there, and there are beings that exist in a spiritual manner around us that we don't even know about all the time. When we recite God's names, when we use these letters of God, like we discussed before, as the Sefer Yetzirah says, that with 32 paths of wisdom, God created the world, the 22 letters, the 10 Sefirot, it means to say that through the combination of all of these things, we can create things. It's easy enough to see how we can create things. Let's prove it online. I'll prove it anytime to you. Online, I will prove it. We can go up to a person. I can do it with you right now if I wanted to. But I'm not talking about you. I'm just going to talk about it as Reuven and Shimon. Reuven goes up to Shimon one day. Shimon didn't have such a great day. He's not feeling all right. Reuven comes up to him. He says, "You stupid fool. You broke that thing again." Shimon admits, yeah, that's right. That's what happened. The whole day was ruined. He broke this thing. His day is finished. He doesn't know what to do with himself. And Reuven comes up to him and he says to him, "You have done something terrible." Now Shimon has had it for the whole day. He doesn't know what to do with himself. His whole day is ruined. He doesn't know what to do. On the other hand, Reuven comes up to Shimon. He tells him about the fact that he broke this, whatever. He had a bad day. And he says to him, "You know what, Shimon? You're a terrific guy. You are a good guy. And I just want to tell you, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how you did it. It doesn't matter if you broke it. All for the good. I wish you the best. You're great. Don't give up. You're the guy. You're the man. You can do it." Suddenly, Shimon feels terrific. How is it that this happened? Through the words of my mouth, I was able to change the status of Shimon. I can make Shimon feel terrible if he wants to, of course. If he doesn't take note of my insults, then it won't have any effect. But generally speaking, people are affected by the things we say to them. And if we tell them how dreadful they are, we're going to destroy them. And if we use these same letters for good, by combining the letters in the way for good, we change the person that they can feel good about themselves. This is the power hidden behind these letters. When we recite these names of God, so too there is a hidden power within the words of God. And when we say that name, we release the power of that word in order to cause a reaction in this world. This is what the Ramchal is teaching us. We're going to learn more about it in more detail as we progress. This is the world as the Ramchal is pointing out to us in the heading of this chapter on divine names and witchcraft. This is not something which is just a joke by the side, but really this is a reality. There is a spiritual aspect of life out there. And the Ramchal wants to tell us that the Torah is there to teach us not just about physical things, of doing things in a physical way, but there is a spiritual world out there. He introduces it to us, and he almost invites us and says to us, if you're interested in pursuing to understand what this world is, I'm here to tell you more about the secrets that lie behind these spiritual worlds and these spiritual aspects, these spiritual beings that he's going to discuss. So we're going to leave it at this for today. We've reached our time, end of the shiur. So please don't go away, but I just want to conclude for my YouTube viewers and just say thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the shiur. If you did enjoy the shiur, please click on the like button, subscribe to my channel, and click on the bell so that you'll be notified also of future shiurim. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me, Eliyahu Sher, www.lovingkindness.co. I wish you all the best. Bye-bye. Shalom, shalom.